Howdy lovelies, how are you doing? Welcome back to Our Crafting, where we learn, grow and craft together. Today we're going to learn a new technique, ink smooshing, using tags of various sizes, also learning to make specimen cards. Here I have two examples of specimen cards which I made with the Tim Holtz Sizzix die set. This one is called Specimen. I also want to show you what I do with those strips of paper that I so religiously save. Take a few strips, you can start using them and work them down so that you can empty your scrapbooks. I'm going to just do choose two strips of text, ink it up with vintage photo archival ink, and I'm going to stamp on there. Press well to get a good impression, and I'm just stamping on the one strip. Trim it down, not throwing away the other pieces, cutting down the middle of that, and there we have those two beautiful little strips that we can add, same as those. So I keep those and I can add it to tags or whatever project. Using some cardstock, we're going to cut it down and make our own specimen cards. Before I've done, whenever I want to clean a stamp, I will stamp on cardstock, whatever specimen cards tags I have with me, just to use up that ink, clean the stamp, and build up layers for whenever I want to work with them. That's that wooden stamp that I used before. These are remnants from a previous project. Going to cut it down, just checking if it's perfect, just making sure that it's lined up, and just trimming off that slither there. You can see it's folded already, so I'm going to trim it with that in mind so I can use the other part for a specimen card. Keeping those little bits, we can always use them. A bigger sheet that I'm going to cut down, making sure that it's straight, which one side obviously isn't, but let's cut, making sure that it's flush, turning over because I realize that side is not straight. So there's our two specimen cards, and that smaller one that we cut. I'm being lazy, so I'm putting them on top of each other and having to run the blade through twice to get a cut. So there's our specimen cards. For today, I'm going to trim this with a pair of scissors. Normally, if it's a collage, I tear the paper, but I want it neat for the specimen cards. You don't have to add the book pages. You can just go ahead with the ink smooshing. However, I like the effect of that. That's a truly vintage book page. You can see the yellow on the paper already. Not throwing those strips away, keeping it for the next stamping session. My cardboard strip or cardstock strip is taller than the book page, so I'm adding glue to the book page and gluing that to the cardstock. Putting that more or less in the middle. Using that hotel access card to burnish it well. Putting it to one side to dry. I'm going to use the whole piece of cardstock there, so I'm putting glue to the cardstock. And make sure there's glue in the middle as well. Gluing that down. You will see there's a bit that we're short. Not to worry, we add the other sheet there. Do the same there with the hotel access card. Burnish it. You can use a gift card, old credit card, ID cards, whatever. These are very useful tools in the craft room. Trim that down and keep that in the box. Now, letting that glue dry. That one I'm not going to cover with old book pages. Silicone mat. I'm grabbing my silicone mat. If you don't have one, use a cellophane packaging material or acetate lamination sheet, a plastic food storage bag, anything. I used many of those specimen cards before to do this technique. Spritz water on the ink after you dabbed it on your packaging material, and then just press your tag or specimen card in there. You can use this on whatever you want to use. You can even do that on graphics so that you can have that grunge effect. That one I've used before, so I'm adding more layering to that. Look at that beautiful coloring happening there. I'm going to use the silicone mat now, dabbing ink on top of the silicone mat. Use the water sprayer, get big droplets on there. You can see it react with the water immediately. You can do the same technique with a stamp block. Using tea dye on there, just put the ink directly to the stamp block, spritz with water, and then you can dab it to your project. It makes bigger blotches, but if that is the look you want to go for, then that is perfect. Let the ink dry in between, otherwise it just turns into one new color. If you dry the ink, it will show beautiful layering. It dries very quickly, depending on the amount of water that you added. I can do ink smooshing for hours. Once I start, I cannot stop. So, adding more and more and more, making sure that we use all that ink. You can smear it through the ink, you can dab it in there, all over, just one side, both sides, it's up to you. With both sides, I mean front and back. Getting all those little droplets of ink. You can see I literally smear it right over the silicone mat to actually soak up all that ink. That way I also clean my silicone mat. Silicone mat cleans fairly easily. You can just wipe it down with a damp cloth. Using quite a yellowish tag. You can see the color, it's not that butter yellow from before. Vintage photo. It looks rusty on that yellow background. On white, it's also quite amazing. I love vintage photo. That's quite flimsy. Have a play at to your heart's content. You decide when you want to stop. But just remember to dry it in between. so you can see those beautiful layers. That's a 4x8 tag, manila tag, and such a wonderful surface to work with because it is really quite big. More, that is quite dry, dabbing the last little bit of ink splotches. Doesn't look as if there's anything on the mat, but you can see it there. Look at that. That layering is amazing. Look at all that wetness, dampness on there. Going to blotch that a little bit. Not much because I want that darker spot on that tag. And it will dry that way to show that bit of grunge. Same with that tag. Just blotching some of that ink. And yes, it's soaked into the tag, but now also into the specimen card. It shortens your drying time. You can dry it naturally, or you can dry it with a heat gun. So there are plenty of tags that we can work with, and then the specimen cards. I want to show you the next one, and that is Distress Oxide. Now, magical, absolutely magical. I am awestruck every time that I use this product. And yes, I just want to remind you, this is not a paid promotion. I just love the products. They are amazing. Distress Oxide in antique linen. Going to add that. Remember, it's a pigment-based ink, so that opacity is there, though you can still see the layers underneath because it's a very light color. Almost looks as if I added gesso to the tag. Just adding here and there, no rhyme, no reason there. Just wanting to show you the product and the magic that will happen in a little bit. The complete Distress range with the oxide ink, Distress crayons, all of that are water reactive. Adding a bit of vintage photo there with the ink blending tool. Again, just adding where I want to have some of that magic happening. Not completely covering the layers that we have added with the Distress ink. Here and there, the big tag. In a little bit you will see the magic happening, and I'm sure you will enjoy it as much as I do. Walnut stain, much darker. Closing my ink pads. Just wanting to take all of that away. There we go. Some water. That's the magical component. Add some splashes of water all over, and you will immediately see that reaction. I want to add more water there. You can obviously pour water in a little bowl. There I add some droplets with a sprayer. because I wanted to add in specific areas, adding some with my finger points, or fingertips rather. You can see the water on that tag to the left. The others it's not so clear. I'll show you in a bit. You can see, look at that, the magic is happening with the oxide, but see how the Distress ink also reacted with the water to the right top hand corner. And there you can see the Distress ink also responding to the water, activated with that. And I'm leaving that to dry by itself. Same with that, look at that. Look at all those colors. Absolutely amazing. I love those ink splotches. Look how the ink is running around on that tag. And that's the Distress ink. Alright. It's dry now. Look at those beautiful colors. Absolutely amazing. We never use purple, but look at that purple. And that grunge there. Look at that beauty. All those layering. The water droplets that ran. Isn't it amazing? I just love it. We're not going to work with the tags today. There's no time for that. We'll do that at a later stage. Back to our specimen cards. Folding that over on that fold line that was there before, using the handle of the Distress tool or the blending tool. Folding the other one also on that. If you don't have a bone folder or a scoring board, you can use a metal ruler or a normal plastic ruler. Just fold it over. And we can burnish it well with that plastic card. Anything. Quite flimsy still. Paper doesn't have any memory, so we can bend it. Cutting off that excess. Not throwing away those strips, as we can stamp on them still. Going to punch the holes in. You can decide to just do one side of it punching, but my punch is not doing its job. I must say, they had been working overtime the last couple of years. Got that out of there and just trimming the rest of that circle off with a pair of scissors. I will really have to try that aluminium foil trick to sharpen the punches, or aluminum for the Americans watching. I want to now use a 2.5 inch circle. Let's hold thumbs, maybe it's working. It was giving us hassles the other day, fitting it in, trying to get it centered, punching, and it did the same thing. Only cut half of that circle out. So trimming the rest with a pair of scissors. Get some cellophane packaging material or acetate lamination sheets so that we can use that for our specimen cards. Choosing another one, so we will make 4. Cutting a strip so that it can fit into whichever specimen card I'm choosing. The smallest one there, make sure it fits in nicely. Trim the excess off. Using some of Tim Holtz goodies. I've really got some tiny ones there, which was the wrong purchase. Not returning it though, I love it. I bought the snippets instead of the normal one. I will add the pack for you at the bottom in the description box. Adding that cellophane material to the inside with glue, as there's not really a lot of space on top to add double-sided tape. Adding that in the middle. Adding glue to the side so that we can glue it shut. And it fell out. And put it back inside. One is done. Again, let's repeat the process. Getting our acetate, and we're going to trim off a piece to fit inside. Just cutting it slightly smaller than the width of that, then cutting it shorter to fit in there. And it's a double layer, so I don't have to worry about folding it over. Adding some glue, there's really not space for double-sided tape there. Putting some glue right around so that we can glue the cellophane down. Sliding that mushroom in there, which fits perfectly. A little bit more glue to the edges. Be careful not to add too much glue, otherwise the ink might seep through onto your cellophane and that will spoil your specimen card. Make sure the excess glue goes onto the mat. We can clear that, and there is our card. Another one. Which mushroom? There we go. All right, that one fits. Trim our cellophane yet again. Fit it in there, trim it down. This time I'm using double-sided tape, trimming off the little strip again in half, as we don't need more than that. Taking the backing off, acetate in there, and now I'm going to trim off the excess, which you could have done first. Put the mushroom in there, and now to put some double-sided tape down on top and bottom. Some glue to the ends so that we can glue that specimen card shut. Same thing, sort of measuring where we should cut the acetate. Trim it down. trimming that double-sided tape smaller, cut it lengthwise in half so that it can fit on there, taking the backing off. And of course, doing it on screen, it takes longer. Turning it so I can see it better. There we go. Cutting another strip of double-sided tape, adding that on top so that we can use that to close our specimen card. Remember to put a piece on top as well. So you've got one on the bottom, on top, put the mushroom in, take the backing off. And now some glue to seal the edges. You can put in whatever you want in your specimen cards. Bugs, butterflies, flowers, birds, real dried flowers. Those would be awesome. Get the excess glue out there, and there we have it. So we made 4. Now we're going to learn how to do stenciling. I found these stamps that I had bought previously. It's a pack with stamps and a stencil, also from Tim Holtz. No number to those. Those are from various sets and a few single stencils. Deciding what I like to use. Going to take a makeup brush, which is soft, tea dye, Distress ink, changing my mind with stencil, and starting. You can decide how hard you want to brush, how much ink you want to put on. Do it till you like it. That's a very subtle color change there, but loving the effect. Circular motions, up and down, left to right. You decide how you want to add this. Adding a bit to the right hand top corner as well. Again, no prescriptions there. You do it to your liking. Changing the stencils a bit. Adding in a circular motion for that circle pattern. Isn't that amazing? Up and down for that pattern, just adding some more interest and layers. Going to turn over the punch so you can see which one you use. 4 layers of paper, so it's a bit tough on the poor punch, but it still made it. If you don't have a corner rounder, you can always use a pair of scissors and just trim it off. Use something like a coin or a bottle, a cap, to just trace the corner that you want to round. Changing stencils again. Deciding to go for the big numbers. Trying to get ink just on the number itself. And that's number 2, like you can see there. Then I change to number 1. Adding more ink to fill that and brighten it up. So there's number 21. Got a little bit of that back bottom pattern So I'm repeating it to the other side of that specimen card. Vintage photo. For the next layer, of course, adding more interest, and I will say that continuously, because that is what makes projects visually pleasing, is when there's interest. Some polka dots, I simply love polka dots. I had some ink on that acetate, so I just wiped it off with my finger, adding some polka dots to that. One specimen card, two. Adding a bit of this blocked pattern and repeating it in the top left corner as well. I normally finish one color. You can, however, do it how you wish. Complete one specimen card before going on to the next. I prefer to do it layer by layer, in other words, color by color. Adding those plus signs in walnut stain. B plus is not a blood group, it is an acronym for being positive. That's why I like those little pluses so much. So now adding some labels. I'm using some mushroom labels from Digi and SVG Designs for You on Etsy. I've got various of their labels, and will see me use it in upcoming projects. I will leave the description or the link for you below in the description box. Adding those labels with normal glue stick, as it still gives you a bit of maneuverability, and you can get it straight or just right. If you use some stronger glues, once you put it down, it's glued down. So just adding some labels there, getting some more labels from either Tracy Fox or again Digi and SVG Designs for You. Deciding where I want that label. Closing my little container there, and then I see, oops, one more little label I did not glue down. Going to add some stamping from that beautiful stamp set. And seeing that we're doing mushrooms, there's some words, toxic, that I'm going to add. Adding that to the stamping tool or the stamp block. Inking it with walnut stain. Going to leave that one or the smallest specimen card just as it is. Adding stamping to this one, and going to use archival ink in Black Suit. Completing the tags by inking the edges, It just rounds it off nicely and of course pulls the eye into the center of our project. And of course Vintage Photo, I'm using Vintage Photo to do the inking on the edges. Of course it's optional. If you don't like the inked edges, that's your choice. You don't have to do it. Once you start using the inked edges, I can assure you, you will never look back again. And there we have 4 specimen cards. We will use those tags at a later stage, and we will attach this as soon as we gathered our journal. Thank you for crafting with me. Hope you enjoyed the session, that you learned something new, and will go and try to make it your own. Don't forget to tag Wawa Crafting if you post on social media. Also, please give me a thumbs up if you want to see more content like this. If you haven't done so yet, please subscribe. Love to see you back again. Goodbye.